Yo, I'm Justin Anulim, and these are my top 10 Kanto Pokemon. To preface this video, I want to make sure that I've stated it somewhere in it that this isn't going to be like a competitive listing. This is a personal favorites video, essentially. Number 10. At number 10, I have Pikachu, and admittedly, this is kind of a gimme answer because I have, much like the majority of the fan base, I'm sure, always had a soft spot for Pikachu, at least in terms of character design and things like that. Obviously, stats-wise, unless you're playing the Let's Go games, Pikachu is kind of, well, not unusable in the early game, and certainly as someone who usually chooses Charmander, Pikachu's an excellent way to get past Misty, that otherwise is a little bit difficult, but certainly, Pikachu's a lot more difficult to bring into the later game, and so, by and large, it definitely has a spot on the top 10, but pretty safely here at 10. Number 9. My number 9 pick is sort of a recent change. It's Vileplume, and don't get me wrong, I've always liked Vileplume decently, but I feel it probably deserves a bump up onto my top 10 list, as if you're watching the current Nuzlocke series, a Gloom was what we got for our randomized Kanto starter, and so I'm figuring, certainly for that purpose, given when this video is coming out, it would be a little awkward if I didn't go ahead and give it a spot, although I don't have as much history with it as I'll have with the other members of the list, so that's why it also really only makes 9. Number 8. The number 8 spot on the list is Snorlax. This is a Pokemon that I think a lot of people who have played a Kanto game have given a shot to because there are 2 guaranteed encounters with it, and while it is a bit of a difficult fight and not the easiest to capture, anyone who has successfully captured it knows that it is a really strong Pokemon for a playthrough, considering its base attack is just really phenomenal, especially in Gen 1, where a lot of Pokemon options have kind of wonky stats, so Snorlax just being a solid option is a real benefit to that game. And I haven't always used it on playthroughs, but some of my most successful runs have indeed used Snorlax just because, like I said, it's, of the available options, it is a really solid physical attacker. Number 7. The number 7 pick is going to be a little bit ironic because it's largely on this list because it's one of my favorite flyers from this gen, despite the fact that it is Dodrio, who, by pretty much all accounts, should not be able to learn the move Fly. It is also obtained a little late to be a primary flyer, though not, too ridiculously, especially because in the first in the Kanto games, certainly, regardless of which generation, you don't need to fly, well, honestly, ever. It's mostly just a convenience, so putting it off a bit because I prefer Dodrio to either Fearow or Pidgeot, who I think are usually people's go-tos for flyers, is definitely something that I have certainly occasionally done, and I do kind of like it explicitly for the very different feeling it has to the other 2 birds, who, don't get me wrong, I don't dislike their designs, but Dodrio being an ostrich is definitely a neat difference that the others are just sort of more generically birds, to me, anyway. Number 6. The 6th on my list is going to be a Pokemon that I'm sure I share on a favorites list with a lot of people, Gengar. I've always thought that his design is really cool. I will admit the through line of Ghastly to Haunter to Gengar sort of loses me a little bit. I don't see the transition quite as strongly there, but regardless of how kind of weird I feel like his evolutionary line is, I still really love Gengar, and Haunter, to be honest, as well. But other than Pikachu, I was wanting to make sure that the rest of these members of the list were always the most advanced version of their family line. So I guess I should also go ahead and mention on that topic, from a lot of these other ones, I'll try to also throw in like an honorable mention if one of the pre-evolved forms of them would also otherwise get a spot on the list, but it would have been pretty boring if I'd just put some entire families, because there are some cases where I do just like every member of a particular evolutionary line more than 10 individuals, and 10 individuals will just make for a better list. Number 5. Breaking into the top 5 now, we have a Pokemon whose design I really like, but I will admit I've almost never used because it's a fossil, and I don't really put a lot of effort into fossil Pokemon because they evolve so late, but he is Kabutops, because I was never a part of the whole Twitch Plays Pokemon, and I've just always liked Kabutops better. Number 4. Similar to my pick of Snorlax, my number 4 pick is also another Pokemon that technically pretty much everyone who's ever played a Kanto game has at least had the opportunity and has probably taken that opportunity to use, Lapras. Being a, well, I want to say fire trainer, but honestly that's just not really. Being someone who frequently picks the fire starter at any rate, my opinion of water types has gone back and forth over the years, because there are some water types that I like, but by and large, any of them that I've had to fight too often, I kind of start to dislike, because they are a bane to fire types. But Lapras is a water type that I've used occasionally and definitely enjoyed, partially because you almost never fight them. And it's definitely you do always need a water type, because Surf is mandatory in most of the generations that it's present for as an HM, and so for Gen 1, frequently I will wait until that point to get a water type, or else just teach it to someone else who can know Surf despite not being a water type. Number 3. Coming in at number 3 will be the only, I'm pretty sure technically still legendary on the list, Zapdos. While the other legendary birds I do like the designs of, I've always had a bit more affinity for Zapdos. I think it might be the spikiness of its design just seemed a little more cool, which, ironic given one of the birds is ice, and definitely has a very cool, if you catch my drift, theming to its design. But Zapdos has just always been really appealing to my design philosophy, so. Number 2. Coming in at number 2, we have our penultimate spot going to Venusaur, who isn't really a starter that I pick very often, but I've definitely come to really appreciate it because I somewhat recently have begun watching a lot of ranked Pokemon battles in the current generation, and it's been really impressive to see how important Venusaur is to a lot of Sun core teams. And so, while, like I said, I don't usually pick Bulbasaur, it has been really impressive to me to see just how very powerful Venusaur can be, especially in competitive, because I've known the whole time that if you want to not have a really bad start to your Kanto playthrough, don't pick Charmander, do pick Bulbasaur, because he will crush the first 2 gyms, which gets you a pretty decent amount, well, and he resists Lieutenant Surge, so yeah, Venusaur is which at the time will be a Bulbasaur and then Ivysaur, is an excellent pick for the early game, so I've always respected it for that, even though I've still had more of an affinity for what I think you can probably predict is going to come up as our number 1 pick, and so that's why, sort of as a recent bump up, Venusaur definitely earns the number 2 slot for me. Number 1. And finally, wow, couldn't have guessed that, Charizard is my number 1 pick. And here, once again, I will go ahead and mention, while I'm not super fond of Charmeleon, Charmander is definitely also one that if I wasn't using this rule of family lines getting their own together slot, Charmander probably would have had one of the other top 10 slots as well. But Charizard has just, ever since the first introduction I had to Pokemon, has been one of my favorites, and it's kind of just remained there. I do absolutely agree that it has been receiving way too much focus from Game Freak, and I'm kind of okay with that. But on the other hand, I do want to see other Pokemon get the attention they deserve. Yeah, he should absolutely not have been the ace of a Galar champion. That's gone a bit too far. So, that was the list. I'd love to hear what some of your top 10 picks are. Leave them in the comments below, and we'll catch you next time.